Bo Nix should be the starter for the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton on day one. And we'll tell you why on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every
What's
day.
up, Broncos Country? Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country for tuning in and listening to us for your first listen of the day every single day. And just a reminder to all you out there in Broncos Country, whether you're a returning listener or a brand new listener, we have you covered every single day, all year long, free and available everywhere you get your podcast, or you can watch us on YouTube and you can interact with other members of Broncos Country. So make sure you interact, subscribe, follow wherever you do so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team every single day, all year long, because for the true fan, there is never an off season. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined alongside, as always, by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. And look, a lot to break down on today's episode, Locked on Broncos, as we start to begin our NFL draft profile series where we look at every single draft pick of the Denver Broncos and we analyze positional narratives, player narratives, and ideal fits going into their first season, obviously as rookies in the National Football League. And really going to ask the questions today is the Broncos roster around Bo Nix, is it good enough? Should Nix be the starter on day one for the Broncos? And there are a lot of myths surrounding Bo Nix that we'd like to dispel, and that's something we're going to kick off today's episode, Locked on Broncos. And Sayre, I can tell you this, as somebody who's been an Oregon Ducks fan since being a kid, having watched Bo the last two seasons, I even put it out there on Twitter a couple of times last year. I'm like, hey, Bo Nix, future Denver Bronco. And everyone's like, no, you're crazy. You should be, like, somebody said I should be euthanized for that take. And I went back to all that stuff and I was like, well, let's take a look at that. I'm like, maybe your opinion should be in that subject matter. But there are so many things that we've seen about Bo Nix. I've seen it also in our YouTube comments from people who obviously have not watched Bo Nix because we've seen things like, well, he's not athletic. Anyone who's ever watched a Bo Nix game, whether he was even at Auburn, whether it was at Oregon, knows that Bo Nix, he is an athletic quarterback. So, I mean, there are a lot of narratives that we're seeing being put out there about Bo Nix. First off, I guess we can really talk about the fact that some people are saying, well, he's not really a great athlete, which I find to be absolutely ridiculous. I want to know where people are actually watching these things.
I do too, Cody. I mean, I've been trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know. From everything that I remember about Bo Nix, I remember way early on in his collegiate career, I feel like I remember people saying like, oh, he could be the next Tim Tebow. You know, he was that kind of good dual threat quarterback coming out of the high school ranks. And of course, now that you see the way that he transitioned his game to the Oregon level, now he's gone from being, you know, a possible Tebow to now being this guy who, all he does is throw screen passes. All he does is throw behind the scrimmage and the receivers do all the work. Cody, I keep going back to this quote that Sean Payton said in an amazing little piece with Bill Belichick the night of the draft on the Pat McAfee show. And he said this. I want to find the exact quote because look, it was a big deal. We talked about how he, you know, you throw away all the screens, you throw away all the short passes. He was first in yards per attempt, first in completion percentage downfield, and he rattled off all these stats. I wish I had all of them in front of me, but he rattled off all these stats about how Bo Nix is just, he was one of the best quarterbacks. You throw out all the short passes and you don't grade on that curve. He was still one of the best in college football. And you see the way that he creates outside of the pocket when he needs to, the way that he anticipates pressure and gets outside and keeps his eyes downfield. I saw Dan Orlovsky did a great piece on him as well, where he talked about how, man, the safety came and dropped down in coverage and took away this short read, like the first read that Bo was going to throw to. And so Bo gets all the way over to his third read, coming on a deep cross over the middle of the field and just threw a strike. And it's just, there's so many of these narratives about him that's like, all he does is throw these screen passes. Look, Broncos country, I think Bo said it best. You just got to go back and watch the tape. The tape speaks for itself.
I thought he was fiery when he said it too. I was sitting up there and listening to him. And I'm glad that he kind of fired back at that narrative a little bit. Like, he completed 74.9% of his passing. And was like, well, obviously he set the FBS record in terms of completion percentage just because he just kept throwing screens. Like, no, that's not the narrative, because like in his 2 seasons at Oregon, he threw for 8,101 yards in just 2 years, while also averaging 9.2 yards per attempt passing. Like, if you watch the actual tape, and this has been my biggest gripe on the people that are throwing these out there, is People are exposing themselves for not actually having watched Bo Nix. They're buying into Bo Nix at Auburn, this and that. Like, watch Bo at Oregon. He elevated the program. He played within the system. He's a 3-level thrower. He's got all the ability to do the things that Sean Payton wants him to do. There's also a narrative he doesn't have a strong enough arm. I mean, Sayre, like 2 seasons, 74 passing touchdowns compared to 10 interceptions. When you look at like his overall career arch, they're averaging 9.6 yards per attempt at Oregon. And I also felt like it's interesting enough is like, this is a guy who also went on the road. I remember watching the Ducks beat Utah this year in one of the early games where College Game Day was there. And a lot of people are saying, well, what has Bo Nix won? Like, Bo Nix obviously helped the Oregon Ducks have a winning record. They won a lot of games. They won way more games than they lost. And their 2 losses this year were to Washington, who was in the national championship game against Michigan. And obviously Washington's a great program, or was a great program. Not sure what they're going to be like this year with the whole change of them losing their head coach. Obviously, a lot of guys going to the NFL draft. Like, the fact that they had so many dudes go in the draft this year is a testament to how good of a program that is. And Oregon, I think, lost by not even a combined 7 points. I think it was 6 points total or something along those lines. Like, Bo Nix orchestrated poise, the ability, especially on the road, like 16 touchdowns on the road, Sayre, to 0 interceptions in road games this year. That's an impressive trait that I'm hoping follows him here to the NFL, because he had a lot of success and he also has the arm. Go watch him and Troy Franklin highlights. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he certainly, I mean, impressive in all categories is kind of the way that I would describe Bo Nix. I think there's this huge, Sean Payton warned us about this, didn't he? He's like, don't get on that train, right? Don't get on the NFL train that tells you how to think. Like, and then that's really the situation here, in my opinion, because when you watch Bo play, you see the things that Sean Payton said. Like, he even has gone out of his way to say, like, look, we've been impressed with his arm strength, and people say that he doesn't have that strong of an arm. And I had to find that quote that he said on the Pat McAfee show, because I think it's so important. It highlights some of the most important traits about Bo Nix. He said, first on third down, first with fewest sacks, the most accurate passer in college football history, first at the end of half 2 minute, first at the end of game in 2 minutes, second in red zone. These statistics, Cody, that matter to the Broncos, that the very things that Sean Payton, when he was asked, like, what does a quarterback have to do to be better in your offense, right? He mentioned these things. These are all the things that Bo does well. That's why you and I talked many times about why he could be the perfect fit for this offense. You just feel like there's so many things out there about him, so many things that people say about him. NFL draft analysts calling him, I've seen everybody say that, oh, he should have been a 2nd-round pick or a 3rd-round pick or a 6th-round pick. I think somebody mentioned in our comments they should have been a 6th-round pick. That's pretty crazy when you watch him play. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I'd be, I don't know. I find more that I align with what Sean Payton is saying. Like, maybe there was a chance that you could have traded down and still got him. There's no way you play with that kind of fire during the draft, not with what this guy put on tape.
No, and if the Broncos did that, and let's say the Raiders went up and took him, then everybody would be like, oh, they had Bo Nix right there. How come they didn't go and get him? Like, it's a lose-lose in the optic standpoint here. But I also want to leave you with this to kind of combat that. He's not a great athlete. But his first season at Oregon, Sayre, I don't know if many people remember this. He ran for 14 touchdowns, right? He had 89 carries for 510 yards. He had 54 carries for 234 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns this past season at Oregon. He can run some RPO looks. And look, I even think that we might be able to see, like, can we pull out some Taysom Hill film here for Bo Nix and see what Sean Payton can do with certain, formation looks or personnel sets that Taysom had a lot of success in. You can do that here with a guy like Bo Nix. So there are a lot of myths surrounding him. Sorry, I'm all tongue twisted here today, getting fired up about this because, like, I see stuff on social media, I see stuff in the comments. I'm like, you haven't watched Bo. You don't know Bo. That's my whole mantra that I'm throwing out here, getting fired up on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But I think that if you go back and you watch the tape and you get access to go and watching all these games, and even in the games in which they lost to Washington, go watch Bo Nix and tell me you don't come away with impressed by what he was able to do and some of the poise that he demonstrated in those games specifically. And look, I believe he should be a starter from day one. Sayre believes the same thing. And look, Broncos Country, that's something we're going to dive deep into here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Broncos Country. Today's episode, Locked On Broncos, is brought to you by our friends over there at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive in your day-to-day. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether that's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Once again, that's ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And today's episode of the show is also brought to you by our friends over there at the Game Time app, which is now an authorized marketplace for NBA games and NBA tickets. And look, right now is the exciting time if you're a Denver sports fan to get involved in the action, because the Denver Nuggets are moving on to round 2, and they're going to host the Minnesota Timberwolves for games 1 and 2 at Ball Arena. And Game Time, they make it easier to get playoff tickets, and they also make it to where you can get them faster. And the prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And if you're in a market that has an NBA playoff team right now and you happen to be a Broncos fan listening to this episode of the show, make sure you check out Game Time, because they will take you to all the action, not only for sports, but for concerts, comedy, theater, and other events that are going on in your area. And the thing I like the most about the Game Time app, I get to see what the action on the court or on the field is going to be inside the app with their seat views, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what you're going to be getting when you go to whatever event you are going to. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Bo Nix should be the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos the minute he steps on the field at the rookie OTAs here. And Cody and I, we're going to tell you exactly why that's the case on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But we want to say thank you to every single one of you that's been with us every single day throughout the course of this offseason, rocking with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's always your team every day, free and available everywhere that you get your podcasts, as well as you can watch the show on YouTube. And we appreciate all of you that are subscribed over there on YouTube, helping us reach that 12,000. We got past the 12,000 subscriber mark over the course of draft weekend, setting some huge numbers over there. So if you're not already subscribed to YouTube, go ahead and do that as well. And Cody and I, we always love to engage with you over there as well. So Cody, let's talk about this. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. We take a first-round quarterback, but not always. I mean, there's some situations and instances where guys aren't always ready day one. Let's talk about maybe the most obvious reasons why we feel you and I both agree on this. So we're not planting our flags on either side of this argument. Let's maybe talk about the most obvious reasons why Bo Nix is a day one starter for this team at quarterback.
Well, he's not your typical young quarterback who's coming into the NFL. Now, granted, he's a little bit more experienced. 24 years old. He's going to be 25. He's married. He's very mature. You don't have to worry about, I think, maturity issues with him, off the field. I think more importantly, you just look at how he's respected as a leader. I mean, you go through and you look at what his Oregon teammates have said, like even Jackson Powers Johnson, what he was able to say about him in the pre-draft process. The common consensus about Bo Nix is that, hey, this guy has the tools right now to go out there and be a starter day one. And I go back to before it was even Bo Nix, right? Remember Daniel Jeremiah? I think it was 2 weeks before the NFL draft had even happened. One thing that he had mentioned was, he says, I don't believe that Denver's in a position where you can't throw a rookie quarterback in right away. You feel like you have a good enough nucleus around him. And now obviously his second season with Sean building the offense, there's obviously some adjustments that Sean's going to have to make. And even he's acknowledged at the end of the season, but ideally he said, you can throw him in right away and be okay. And I look at Bo Nix, I even go back to what Sean Payton said. And Sean said that, he has a belief that he's the most pro-ready quarterback in this year's NFL draft in terms of being ready to play right away from day one. That's something that he also acknowledged openly. So I think that's a huge thing as well. And at the end of the day, look, I know there's going to be conversations about, okay, the Broncos are going to have a competition between Jarrett Stidham, Bo Nix, and Zach Wilson. The reality of the situation is there shouldn't be, right? And I understand you want to open it up and there's going to be conversations and the premise is going to look like there's a competition. But Sayre, I think that from day one, Bo Nix should be getting all the first team reps. Throw him out there. See what he can handle. I mean, obviously Denver came away. That was part of the private workout. They threw a lot of install, like 3 or 4 day installs, material, like worth of material. They threw it at him. He nailed it. And so see what he can do early on and throw him out there because look, I know that there's this notion and sometimes you do see it. I think Jordan Love's a great example, though I think Jordan Love is also a very great anomaly in this conversation where you do see guys sit a little bit and benefit from sitting. And obviously Jordan was able to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. Aaron was able to sit behind Brett Favre. There was a good nucleus there for that. Denver, that's not the situation here in Denver. What's going to benefit Bo Nix from sitting and learning from Jarrett Stidham? Nothing. Look, Jarrett's a pro. He's been in the NFL for various years now, but Bo Nix should be out there right now playing. And I think the moves that Denver made in the NFL draft, I think have kind of set the foundation for them to be able to do that. And I think Denver's nucleus around him is actually pretty solid in my opinion. So it's just really good right now for him. Throw him out there and see how he does. That's my premise. Sean Payton could feel an entirely different way, though I doubt he does.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way. Like you said, the nucleus around him, right? Because a team with a quarterback, it's almost like there's something that's giving that's got a gravitational pull, right? Without a quarterback, it's like the chaos of, deep space or whatever. But with the gravitational pull of having a quarterback in place, everybody in the organization knows who they're rallying around it, and you're following a certain leader as opposed to just think about the situation with Cortland Sutton right now, right? I mean, he's had so many different quarterbacks over the course of his NFL career. I'm embarrassed to even know the number, so I don't know it off the top of my head. Nobody needs to comment either how many quarterbacks. It's been an embarrassing number of quarterbacks that Cortland Sutton has had. You could understand why he may be a little frustrated by that. But when you have a quarterback in place, just look at how excited the team was when it felt like Drew Lock was the guy, right? When he had that nice stretch of 5 games at the end of his rookie season, and you felt like you could really rally around this young quarterback, and it felt like you had something there. There was excitement in the building. Same thing happened when Russell Wilson came into the building. All hope was renewed. We saw those videos of the receivers out at his San Diego complex and everybody, tweeting and getting excited. And we know those things didn't work out, but it's much better to at least have that gravitational pull of a franchise quarterback and give him all the reps. Don't compromise Bo Nix's reps on the field by saying, look, we want to see what we got in Zach Wilson, or we want to see what we still got in Jarrett Stidham. You have committed by spending the 12th overall pick, the second highest of any quarterback ever selected in the history of the Denver Broncos franchise. You've already invested as much in him to say, look, this is the guy. You said it, Cody. He's NFL ready. We believe they've already put that out there on paper. We believe he's NFL ready, the most NFL ready maybe of any quarterback in this class. It's so important that they rally around that and put their money where their mouth is from day one.
When it feels like the Broncos have a really good chance to differentiate themselves now than they have in those prior years. Because remember 2019, who did the Broncos have as their quarterback? Joe Flacco, right? So it was like, are they rallying around Joe Flacco or are they going to rally around Drew Lock, who was selected in round number 2 for them? And there was that discussion point, like when Flacco was struggling, it was like, we just want to see Drew Lock now. Like, let's rally around Drew. Drew comes in, has some excitement there. Denver's not in that situation right now. Like, you can't tell me that, I think players are looking at like, hey, let's just rally around Jarrett Stidham. No offense to Jarrett. I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form as disrespect. Same thing with Zach Wilson and obviously Ben DiNucci. Bo Nix, there's an exciting factor to him. Obviously, he's a young guy. He's very accomplished in what he's been able to do. He's grown tremendously year over year since he came into the college football level, and now he's going to be the face of the Denver Broncos. They're going to do everything they can to make him the face, so why delay that? Put him out there now, and look, if he struggles right away as a rookie, like he has to, like at some point you're going to have to let guys struggle and then continue to grow, and Bo's the type of guy, he loves football. He lives it. He breathes it. Like, that's the only one thing. I don't know if you saw the thing over the weekend from Albert Breer where Sean Payton said, like, what's in your backpack? And he said, tape, because, we got to work out here. Got extra cleats in here. Like, everything in his backpack had everything to do with football. He even did an interview with the Broncos when he was, after his press conference. He's kind of a little get to know you thing on social media where he talked about, he said, what's a hidden talent? He's like, I don't think I have any because, like, I'm just so committed to football. Like, I love that. I live that, eat that, breathe that, like, sleep football as well. And so he's a guy that fans are already relating to. There's a lot of excitement for Nix, I think, for the most part in Broncos country. So your players, I mean, he's already heard from guys like Garrett Bowles, like he even mentioned that as well. So players on this team are already rallying behind Nix at this point. It's important. You have to be able to go out there and establish that from the onset to avoid any confusion. This is Bo Nix's football team, and he deserves to have the opportunities to go through, grow within the system, make the mistakes as necessary going forward here. And look, I think it's going to lead us to our next question here. Is the Broncos roster around Bo Nix good enough? We're going to take a look at specific position and personnel groups here, and we're going to ask the question, like, can Bo Nix have a lot of success here as a rookie? We're going to share our thoughts on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Broncos Country. Today's episode, Locked On Broncos, is brought to you by our friends over there at Monopoly Go. And look, think about Monopoly Go. It's like old school Monopoly. It's competitive and it's fun. And in Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more that you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. They also have cool new playing pieces to travel boards with. They also have hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or when you heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go, it feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything that you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play or the App Store. Once again, Monopoly Go is available for free in the Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, is Denver's roster right now good enough for Bo Nix to come in and have success right away? That's one thing we're going to dive a little bit deeper into on today's episode of Locked On Broncos. Real quick, wanted to say thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day every single day. Just a reminder, you can get Locked On Broncos for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Sayre, let's talk about this right now. I mean, really, when you look at the offense, you look at a quarterback in general. I want to start things off by really talking about something that Sean Payton really highlighted in his press conference following the night that they drafted him last Thursday. And one of the things he talked about is like, what's going to help a young rookie quarterback? Sean Payton said it himself. It's, do you have a strong run game? Do you have a good defense? He said he believes those are the two biggest allies to helping a quarterback, not to mention a young quarterback. And to be honest with you, it seems like this offseason approach, like Denver had a chance to make a lot of movement in those departments, try to shake some things up. And certainly they did. Defensively, they couldn't stop the run last year. They've made a lot of moves so far in free agency and also trading for obviously John Franklin Myers to go out there and stop the run here. Essentially, they brought in some players who can stop the run. And more importantly, they're really focused on trying to build this offensive line and to get better in that department, which, you know, was also underrated in and of itself last season. I feel like this is how Sean Payton has really built this team this offseason. I think Bo's going to come in and fit into it perfectly from the vision that he's encapsulated so far to start the offseason program.
Last two off seasons, let's talk about it for a second. Investment in the trenches. Let's start off with the offensive line, where at the left tackle position could have easily justified getting rid of Garrett Bowles and saving $16 million. The Broncos opted to find any other way to get cap space than to get rid of Garrett Bowles. They prioritized keeping him. You go out and you spend a bunch of money to get Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers, two core pieces of your offensive line. And obviously Quinn Miners has developed into one of the best offensive guards in football. Let's switch to the defensive side right now, where Zach Allen last year was one of the team's biggest free agent acquisitions. John Franklin Myers, you trade for him in the draft. Cody, the contract that he signed, 2 years, $15 million. If that was just a free agent contract for the Broncos this year, it would have been the biggest signed, average annual value for any player the Broncos have brought in. Clearly the investment is there, and they found a way to keep DJ Jones. Could have saved $10 million by cutting him as well. You bring in Angelo Blackson, you add Jonah Ellis to the pass rush. What am I saying here? You raise the floor in the trenches, and you raise the floor of your entire team. It benefits the quarterback tremendously to be obviously good on the offensive line. That helps your quarterback. But why does the defensive line help the quarterback? Well, because if you're getting pressure, if you're getting off the field, if you're playing into the hands of one of your strengths of this team, which you believe to be Patrick Surtain and some of that secondary there, you get those guys opportunities to make plays on the ball, you get out the field, you get your young quarterback as many possessions as you possibly can, and you keep these games to low scoring games, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. You want to be good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. If you can dominate the line of scrimmage, you can be in every game. If you can be in every game, you set your young quarterback up. Look at Houston last year. So that's just where I'm at with it, Cody. And we talked about it all the time on this show. We talked about how you need to get the defensive line better, not just to improve that run D, but to make every aspect of the defense better. That to me is the greatest indicator here that why the Broncos are going to be way better than people think in 2024.
I agree with you. And I think another thing to factor in is that, kind of going back to those two allies, I thought you did a great job of highlighting the defensive side. Let's talk about the offensive side as well. Talk about a run game, right? We obviously, offensive line wise, we don't know who the center is going to be. We anticipate it's going to be Alex Forsyth, who snapped the ball to Nix in 2022 at Oregon. That offensive line is set for the most part. And I know that they had brought in Sam Mustipher. They have Luke Wattenberg. I know there's going to be a competition, but I think, I would pencil in today Alex Forsyth as the starter center. So you have your offensive line solidified. We'll get back to that here in a minute. But look at what they did at the running back position. Look, Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, both guys in a contract year. Jaleel McLaughlin, no contract length beyond this season. And then they go and they draft Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, who's obviously a big physical bruising back who's going to dominate in terms of yards after contact. That's the hope. That's the vision. You bring in an undrafted rookie free agent, Blake Watson, who has maybe an opportunity to turn some heads during training camp, play a little bit of that joker role here. Like, they're really trying to improve the rushing offense, but they went out there and personnel-wise also improved the defensive run stop, as you mentioned. And also, we forgot to mention this as well, not just focus on the defensive line, but also edge rusher. They added, you mentioned Jonah Ellis. I don't know if anyone caught this, but Sean Payton, after they drafted him, said that we really felt like adding that to as the top of, we feel like that's the top of our strength as a team is our edge rusher guys. And we wanted to add to that. I found that to be a little bit of an interesting under the radar comment that I don't think many people picked up on, because Payton clearly believes that the Broncos edge rush group is their strength of this team, which is very exciting. And also, all right, hey, what do you have planned going forward into 2024? But Denver has to get better in those two areas. That'll help a young quarterback. They've certainly done just that. But I also think we have to talk about the personnel and the wide receivers around Bo Nix. Look, I mean, you go and you add Troy Franklin, who's obviously one of his top college targets at Oregon for the past 2 seasons. And you didn't add him just because, okay, we just wanted to add the guy who he played with. They felt like, hey, we can get some value from a guy like Troy Franklin. But you have Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds, now Troy Franklin added to the mix. Jalen Virgil's still a part of the team, which not a lot of people realize. I think there could be a big role for him this season. Greg Dulcich, if he stays healthy, Lucas Kroll. There's pieces around Bo to have success here. And if it's worth throwing anything out there, because I know this is a conversation that happens, I just happened to click on Bo Nix's profile on Instagram the other day because he put a promo out for this draft documentary he's going to be part of, which can't wait to tune into that. And it said, followed by Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's already following him as well. So reading to that what you may, Broncos country, for all the rumors that are going on there about Sutton himself, I think Denver's got a good nucleus of players around him from a receiving standpoint. But even the offensive line, Sayre, though, is much better than people are anticipating, even though they had some of their struggles last year. In a lot of the important metrics, they are sustainable for, I think, Bo to have success here in the National Football League as a rookie.
Yeah, we brought it up on the show before, but ESPN, graded them out as 8th best in pass block win rate last year, 3rd best in run block win rate. What does that mean ultimately? It means that the Broncos offensive line is probably better than most people think, and it's suited for a rookie to come in and be able to have some success. You want to have that kind of foundation for your young quarterback to step into. I feel like at wide receiver, the Broncos have a lot of doubles hitters, maybe a couple of guys that have home run power there. We're in the midst of baseball season here, Cody, so I got to throw in a couple of baseball analogies there, but just because there are a lot of doubles hitters doesn't mean you can't score runs, right? I mean, you want to have that occasional power hitter. I think the Broncos have that with Sutton, with Marvin Mims, but now you've got those doubles hitters, Josh Reynolds, Tim Patrick, Troy Franklin, the rookie coming in. I feel like that's what those guys provide you there, is the ability to keep drives going, to move the chains. They got tough, they're sure-handed, other than I know Josh had those couple of games there late in the season, but those guys know how to move the chains. And you've got those weapons. Just imagine Bo Nix stepping into this with the offensive line playing pretty well. Now you've got this group of young players that I know, there's some guys that are established, but we talk about all these what ifs with guys like Greg Dulcich, Marvin Mims, and now Troy Franklin coming in, Lucas Kroll, all these players who are slightly unproven to say the least. What happens if these guys take that big step in their progression individually? And so they're progressing individually. The scheme is working with Sean Payton. Bo Nix is executing at a high level. Like there's some potential here for some fireworks for the Denver Broncos I'm not saying if they play their cards right, but if these players can progress the way that we hope, I mean, yeah, that's what this time of year is for the NFL. It's late April, early May. You're clinging to some hope here, but you believe in this coaching staff's ability to get the best out of these players. If that happens, man, could be an exciting offensive year for the Broncos in 2024.
Well, we look at where Denver was terrible at last season, third down. Third down was atrocious. I mean, it was almost like you knew when third down was coming, like, all right, hey, get ready for the punt team. Like you already know, like Sam Martin's going out there and he's going to boot it away, but also in the red zone as well. And you bring in Bo Nix, who was one of the top quarterbacks in the nation last year on third down, obviously one of the top quarterbacks in the nation efficiency wise inside the red zone. And you talk about like the narrative about like you got some guys who can be some home run hitters, but also the doubles standpoint. The idea, and it goes back to what you said about what the defense can do for a young quarterback. If you can get your young quarterback more possessions and he can be efficient, let's say you are more successful on third down this year, the fact that Denver won as many games as they did while being one of the worst third down offenses in the entire National Football League is astonishing to me. Now, if they could have improved that ranking by maybe, let's say, instead of like almost bottom last, let's say you go up to like 15th or 14th in the NFL. You know what that does for you? That's more wins. Denver's likely makes the playoffs last year if that's the case in a couple of those games where they lost by one score or less. So it's just about maximizing your opportunities and obviously understanding that within that same breath and that same context, there's going to be times where Bo Nix is going to make mistakes. There's going to be times where the offense and players or personnel units make mistakes here, but it's about growth. And I think that the Broncos and Sean Payton believe they have a guy in Bo Nix who's demonstrated growth year over year, is mature and can handle the workload and the expectations that they want to put on him. And ultimately, they believe they have a team around them. And look, now they're poised not only just here in 2024, but going into 2025's offseason, they are poised to be able to build even more around Bo Nix, which should be very, very exciting for Broncos Country. But look, Broncos Country, we want to hear from you. Do you believe that Bo should be the day one starter here for Sean Payton, the Broncos, in September? Make sure you let us know if you're listening or watching Locked On Broncos wherever you get your podcast. But our NFL Draft Profile series will continue. The Broncos, they added Jonah Ellis to the edge rusher room, which we had a lot of questions about in general. We're going to do a deep dive here on Jonah on tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. For all you everydayers, see you then.